This is a photo of the Andromeda galaxy that I took a few weeks ago, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate how I take the pictures from my camera and telescope and turn them into this. I'll be using two pieces of software mainly, PixInsight and Photshop, and I'm not going to go super in depth on all the specifics on how to do this yourself. This is meant to be more of a high level overview of what a workflow might look like for anyone just getting into image processing. Of course, if you've also just stumbled upon this video and you're interested in how I did this, then please stick around. I didn't make this picture with just a single shot. I don't go outside, set up the telescope, take one picture, and then call it a night. Rather, I leave the rig running all night long taking exposures, and for this particular picture of Andromeda, I took data from 4 different nights of imaging, which totals about 270 individual 5-minute exposures. I should mention that these photos were all taken with a monochrome camera and 4 different filters, red, green, blue, and hydrogen alpha. The red, green, and blue filters will be combined into a color image, while the hydrogen alpha, or HA filter, is going to be used to bring out the red hydrogen nebulae within the galaxy. Now before I do anything with these images, I have to combine them all together, which is called stacking. So to stack these images, I'm going to be using PixInsight's weighted batch pre-processing script. And what I can do is just select the directory of all the pictures I would like to load in, and then it will go through and sort them by the filter and by the date they were taken on. So I've loaded all the files in here now, and after I click run, what it's going to do is it's going to output 4 different files: a master red, a master green, a master blue, and a master HA, which contains all the images stacked together. And also, prior to stacking, it's going to calibrate each individual frame by subtracting out the bias noise, the thermal noise, and the vignetting that occurred in the image. So I'll go ahead and click run here, and then this might take a little over an hour to finish stacking all of them together. These 3 pictures here are examples of what the thermal noise image looks like, and what the bias noise image looks like, and what the vignetting image looks like. This is called a flat field image, so this subtracts the vignetting around it. This is called a dark frame. It subtracts all these hot pixels that occur over long exposures, and this is the bias frame, which subtracts the inherent base noise of the camera. So I'm in a new PixInsight workspace here, and these are the 4 files I'll be working with. So I'm going to load all 4 of these, and these images have all been stacked and calibrated already. So I'm going to start by loading them into PixInsight, and here are all the images. I'm going to rename all these as I bring them in. The first thing you're going to see me do here is hit Ctrl-A to apply an auto stretch with the screen transfer function. It's important to note that this is not altering any of the pixels in the image, it's only altering how they appear on the screen. This enables me to see what the image looks like without actually stretching the pixels yet. And the first step is to combine the red, green, and blue images into a color image. So I'm going to open up the channel combination process and select my RGB views, and then apply global, and then it spits out a color image. I have to change my preview settings so that it displays the image properly. There we go. So this is the color combination image. Now the next step is to do a small crop of the image. If you look at the edges here, there's some weird, there's always weird artifacts at the edge that need to be cropped out. So for this, I'm going to open up the dynamic crop tool and then select basically the entire image, and then move in on the corners and adjust my selection. That should be good, so I'll apply the crop. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the HA image, crop out the bad parts on the edges. Okay, then apply it to the HA. So the next step on the color image is to use the process dynamic background extraction. And if you look at the image, you can see there's a gradient to the background. There's a red hue over here, a greenish hue across the middle here, and that's not good. So we're going to extract that gradient background with this tool, dynamic background extraction. So with this tool, you select background samples kind of all throughout your image so that it can get a sense of what the gradient pattern is so that it can then subtract it. So I'm going to go ahead and place about 40 to 50 of these all across the image. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. I have 58 samples actually. So I'm going to apply this. And it splits me two files. One is the background that it had just extracted, and then two is the corrected image. So if I compare the two, you can see it eliminated the red and the green hues. So now I have a picture with a gradient-free background. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the HA image. So I'll go ahead and repeat the process. Okay, I've got my samples. So I'm going to do the same thing. This is the gradient background that it found. This is the corrected image. Compare the two. It's a slight change, maybe not necessary, but I'll do it anyway. Okay, the next step is to do a color calibration on the RGB image. And my method of choice is the photometric color calibration. Basically, you give it what object you're looking at. This is M31 Andromeda. Give it the coordinates. You type in the approximate date that you took the picture, and you put in your focal length. This was with a 360mm scope, and the camera pixel size was 3.76. And then you can create a background preview for it to use, so I'm just going to zoom in, maybe right here. And then you can give it that region so that it has a reference for what the background is going to be when it does its background neutralization step. So then I can push apply. And from my understanding, the photometric color calibration is going to apply a color calibration to the image that is appropriate for the target. So it draws on real data about that target and how it should look, and then applies that to your image to make it look calibrated. And this process can take a little bit, so I will catch up when it's done. Okay, just finished. It gave me some graphs for the white balance functions, and we can close this now. So now it's color calibrated. I need to refresh the auto stretch. So the next step is called deconvolution. What it does basically is it tightens up your stars to more pinpoints and more distinct. So deconvolution can only be applied on a luminance layer. So we're going to need to extract a luminance layer from this image. So we can put this to the side for now. And we're going to need a few support images to execute the deconvolution. The first of which is a PSF image, or a point spread function, which is basically an image that represents the average star. There's a handy script called PSF image here that I can run, and it takes a fair amount of time, and I'll show you what it does when it is done. Okay, the PSF image creator has finished, so this is the PSF image it has determined is correct for this image. So I'm gonna hit create, and now we have it. If I blow that up, so I'll put that aside for now. The next support image we need is a star mask, so I'm gonna use the star mask function here and go ahead and run that. Okay, so it spit out a nice star mask of the image, basically just telling it where all the stars are so that we can protect them. I'll put this aside for now. The next step is to create a protective mask of the galaxy, and we're going to make a copy of this, and then we're going to work with the histogram tool and basically we'll run a stretch like that. Then we're going to want to clip the darks a little bit, because this is just a mask. We're not actually using this data, so we can clip a little bit of it. That's probably good. And so there's our protective mask. Let me just rename that to protective mask. Alright, now that we have all three of our support images, we can open up the deconvolution process. We're going to insert our PSF into external PSF. And then we're going to turn on deringing, local deringing. The local support image is going to be star mask. Then we're going to apply our protective mask as a mask on the image, and I'll go ahead and hide the mask. So we can create a preview of a little area to test out the deconvolution. So let's go ahead and do a sample. So this is what it did. This is not what we want it to do. So I'm going to try bringing down the global dark setting here and keep trying this until we get a result that looks good. This is better. Let's try bringing it a little lower to half of that, and let's try applying that. Okay, so this is a good deconvolution we have going. You can see it tightens up the stars pretty well, and then you can do it even more by adding some more iterations. So let me actually try that. We'll run 50 iterations instead of 10. There we go. So that's an even better change. Just a general tightening up, and it gives some more structure to the stars. So I'll go ahead and delete this preview and apply this to the entire image, and this might take a few minutes. So the next thing I'm going to do is do some noise reduction on all three images we have now, the luminance, the RGB, and the HA. So I use a process called noise exterminator. I find that the default denoise setting of 0.9 is too high, so I'm going to go ahead and run it on 0.7. And I need to remember to remove the protective mask that was previously on it so that it denoises the entire image. So I'll go ahead and run that now. Okay, the denoise just finished, so let me zoom in here and show before and after. You can see that it really gets rid of that noise, and that is good. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the RGB image, do another 0.7 noise reduction. So that finished, and you can see again it did a great job at getting rid of that noise. And then I'm going to run it one more time on the HA image, and I'm going to run it at its default 0.9 on this image because we're not looking to preserve the structure in this image, we just want the HA color to show through, so it doesn't matter if some of the structure gets deteriorated by the noise reduction. Okay, and then let's look at that. This is a really aggressive noise reduction, so it's a very powerful tool. Okay, continuing on with the HA, we're going to stretch it now using the histogram transformation tool. So let me turn off the auto stretch preview and open up a real-time preview on the histogram transformation and start stretching it. And this is probably a good stretch. So I'll go ahead and apply this stretch and then close out the preview and the histogram transformation. So now I'm going to stretch the luminance, so I'll turn off the auto stretch preview and open up the histogram transformation again, open up the real-time preview and start stretching that. I think this is a good stretch, so I'll apply that, and there we go. Okay, now we're going to stretch the RGB image. So let's disable the auto stretch preview, and then I found that masked stretch works best for me. So we're going to give it our background reference image again. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and run the masked stretch. This will take a few minutes. Okay, so here's the result of our masked stretch. So at this point we're going to want to recombine the luminous layer into the RGB image. So we're going to use the LRGB combination and just apply it to the current image here. Apply the luminous layer, or the luminous image that we applied the deconvolution to. So I can just go ahead and execute that. And now if we look at the before and after of this combination, you can see it kind of dehazed the galaxy a bit, and then it brought over our deconvolution to the stars and kind of fixes up the stars nicely. So now we're going to do another sort of divide and conquer thing. We're going to separate the stars from the galaxy in order to separately adjust the colors of the stars and the color of the galaxy. So to do that, I'm going to use the StarNet 2 process. We're going to want to create a star mask. So we're going to extract the stars, and I'll go ahead and execute that. And this process takes a few minutes as well. Okay, StarNet just finished, so you can see it separated the galaxy and the stars into separate images now, which is exactly what I wanted. So let's start with the stars. I've noticed that there's kind of a reddish halo around all of them, which I would like to try to lessen. So I'm going to use a process called SCNR, which basically picks a color and removes it. So let's try with 100% first. That is way too much. It completely removes the red, and all the stars kind of look white now. I just want to do it a little bit, so maybe I'll try 0.5. I think that is a more reasonable improvement. Yeah, that makes a subtle but noticeable difference. So that's all the adjustments I'm going to make to the stars, so I'll leave this over here for now. And now let's look at the galaxy. So the first thing I want to do is, if we zoom in on this background, it's kind of dominated by green. So I want to try to lessen the green. So let's try maybe 0.6 on that. Yeah, I think that's a nice difference. It removes the overall green cast from the background. So let's do an overall before and after. Yeah, that is an improvement, I think. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is actually the saturation of the galaxy itself. So to do that, I want to create a mask so that we're only affecting the saturation of the galaxy and not any saturation of the background. I'm going to use a script called the game, which is the interactive galaxy mask editor, and it lets you create some ellipsoids to fit your galaxy. I want to wrap it pretty tightly, but not too tight. I don't want to get these outer, like this outer glow here. I don't really want to saturate that. Then I could also add one to this other galaxy up here. And then I want this to be a gradient edge mask, so that there's only a gradient at the edge. And we'll go ahead and create that. So there is our galaxy mask. So now I'll go ahead and apply this mask to the image. So now you can see that we're only going to be affecting these areas and not any of the red background here. So I'll go ahead and disable that mask preview so that that red stuff isn't there. So now I'm going to open the color saturation tool and open up the live preview and start by just bringing the saturation up. So you can immediately see the difference there. Brings out the brown dust lanes and the blue glow of the galaxy. I think I want to bring up the reds a little bit more here and then curtail the violet glow we're getting on the edge to before and after here. That is a good color saturation adjustment. So I'll go ahead and apply that. Okay, now that we're done editing the colors of the galaxy and the stars, we're going to go ahead and recombine them. So this is just simply done with a pixel math script. Go ahead and, so I'm going to combine RGB plus RGB stars, and we're going to apply. And there we go. Now the stars that we kind of removed the red halo from and the galaxy that we boosted the saturation in are now combined back together. So at this point I'm going to do another noise reduction. Not too much. Maybe I'll bring it down to 0.6 this time. But this is kind of going to be like the final noise reduction we do. Okay, so let's look at the before and after of that noise reduction. I think that was a nice final touch there. So at this point, we're ready to integrate the hydrogen alpha data into the image. So let's go ahead and open the HA and kind of align this and create our mask for it. So to align it, I'm just going to do a simple star alignment. with a reference image on the RGB, and then I'll add the HA image and we'll go ahead and apply that. Okay, so now we have our aligned image, so we can go ahead and move that off to the side, and you can see that now that lines up perfectly, and we just need to posit it on top. Really, in the HA, we're looking to add this nebula, this red hydrogen nebulosity within the galaxy's arms here. There's some up here, I believe, as well, and kind of around here. So we don't want to add the stars, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the stars with StarNet. We don't need to keep the stars this time. Okay, so now the stars are gone, and now we want to remove everything that's not the galaxy. So I'm going to create another game mask here, so that it encompasses only the galaxy and none of the background. I think that is okay, and we'll make this a gradient edge mask. So now we need to basically subtract the background from this image. So to do that, it's another pixel math expression. We're going to do HA minus and then the inverse of that mask we just created. So if I go ahead and run that, now we're just left with the galaxy. Now there's one more adjustment I want to make. I don't really want the center of the galaxy to be saturated with the red hydrogen data. So I'm going to remove the center using yet another game mask. Getting the center out of there, and also I don't want this to become a red blob, so let's get rid of that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and make another gradient edge mask. So now we're going to want to subtract this from this image. So we'll do yet another pixel math. We're going to take HA minus the gradient mask we just created and apply. So now we have the HA that we're going to apply. So in order to apply the HA, first I'm going to apply it as a mask, and then I'm going to load a process icon that I got from someone else, link in the description, called HaRGB Combine, and this has all the necessary things to merge your HA into the RGB. And this is the key thing you change here, the multiplier. So let's see what 1.2 does for us. Not much. Let's look at the HA region we're interested in here. Barely anything happened. So let's bump that up to maybe 1.8 and try that again. There. Now you can see the HA is starting to poke through here. So let me show before and after. Yeah, so I think we can get a little more than that. So maybe let's try 2.2. Yeah, that's a nice effect. It really makes those spots jump out at you. So one final thing I'm going to do in PixInsight is star reduction. So for this, I'm going to use another process icon that I'm going to import. These are called Bill's star reduction methods. Again, link in the description for these. Basically what you need to do is first create a starless copy of the image. So I use StarNet for that. So I'll go ahead and run that. Alright, so now that I have a starless copy, I can go ahead and run these star reduction methods which use that starless copy. So I'll just stick with star reduction method 1. And here we have this setting to change, so I'll see what it does with a setting at 0.15, which is the default, I guess. That is quite a drastic change. I don't think we want that quite. Let me try maybe 0.25 instead. It's still a bit much. Maybe I'll go 0.35. Yeah, I think that's a good amount of star reduction. It moves the focus more onto the galaxy in the foreground and kind of reduces the background, which makes the galaxy stand out more. So at this point, I'm done with the image in PixInsight, and I'm going to do some final touches in Photoshop. Okay, I've gone ahead and loaded the image into Photoshop now, and right off the bat, the first thing I'm going to do is a levels adjustment, because I kind of see a red hue in the background that I want to try to knock out. So I'll just bump that up a few. Then also I'm going to lower the overall black point just to make the dark ground just a tiny bit darker. Not too much though. So quick before and after, definitely an improvement. One of the reasons I like to use Photoshop for some final fine tuning is because it has a feature called Adobe Camera Raw, which gives you access to all these great effects and filters here. So I'm going to go ahead and bump up the clarity to, let's try 30. And then you can zoom in here and it gives you a nice before and after that you can switch between. So you can see the clarity improves the clarity of the image, kind of sharpens everything up and makes the details pop out a bit more. So I think I'm good with 30, and I'll go ahead and accept that. The next thing I'm going to do is another Adobe Camera Raw setting, the Dehaze. And you don't want to go overboard with the dehaze, because if I crank it up to 30, like I did with the clarity, click before and after, well, you might personally like what it does to the image, but I don't like how it completely removes that kind of cloud around the galaxy. So I want to keep some of that, but I also wanted to shrink it in a little bit, so let's try 10. So that's more of a subtle change, but I think it's still a good change. Now I'm going to do some selective sharpening, and the way I like to do this is I'll create 2 new layers here. Then I'm going to go into the bottom layer I created, go into Adobe Camera Raw, and crank up the texture to something pretty high, like 50 maybe. And then I'll go ahead and turn on that layer above it. And then on that layer above it, I can use the eraser tool to kind of erase, to paint on the sharpening here. So you can see I'm revealing the sharpened details here. So I'm just going to go around the entire image and try to reveal as much as I can. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that sharpening, so I'll do a quick before and after here. It's subtle from a distance, but if I zoom in a bit, you can definitely see that the details have definitely been sharpened and brought out more. And the final thing I'm going to do is a final vibrance and saturation adjustment. What I'm looking to do is bring out the HA regions, and then the saturation just increase the overall galaxy color. So I don't want to go too much on the saturation, maybe 15. Then the vibrance, I'm looking to bring out those red HA regions, so maybe something like 35 is a good balance. So then if I do a quick before and after on these guys here, it increases their color. And then overall, the saturation on the galaxy definitely increased the galaxy color. And after this is the final image. So this was a high-level overview of how I go about processing my images. I wouldn't encourage anyone to follow this workflow to a T. It's just the way that I ended up processing this picture after much trial and error of seeing what works and what doesn't work. I try something out, and if I like it, I'll use it. Otherwise, I'll just hit the undo button and try something else. I have a vague idea of like the general order of what should happen when in the workflow order, but nothing's necessarily set in stone. And a workflow is also very dependent on the type of target that you're editing, whether it be a galaxy, a nebula, or a star cluster. Each type of target is going to have different methods and ways that you go about bringing out the best in it. So one last time, here is the final image.